Welcome to For the Record, an unfiltered view on current trends and timeless advice for surviving in the aesthetics industry. Whether you're an injector, practice owner, sales rep, or marketer, it's time to set the record straight. Each week, we cut through the chaos and showcase diverse perspectives and winning ideas from the best minds in the industry. I'm your host, Dr. Tiffany Hall, Chief Growth Officer at Aesthetic Record. Now, let's get started on this week's episode. Hey guys, we're back for another episode of For the Record. And today we have an exciting guest, an entrepreneur megastar who I am currently fangirling like 100%. We have the CEO and COO of Skin Clique, Dr. Sarah Allen, who is a successful, fantastic, awesome business person who has taken an idea as a single injector with no funding from just her to this massive, I think, 12-state organization with, 30, 40 providers growing like crazy. And in the meantime, she's launched this really neat and unique subscription skincare box, the first of its kind for medical grade skincare that really took over during COVID and was a way to connect with her patients without being actually in their homes or seeing them for, Botox and filler. So she's got lots of great ideas. She's grown this thing to a mega business, as I said, and I can't wait to pick her brain today and learn all about how she's doing all that with 4 kids and a husband, and also finding time to exercise and still be beautiful and keep up with her, her normal life. So, Dr. Allen, welcome to our show.
Gosh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, you are a delightful person just in general. I've met with lots of industry people over the weekend who've talked about you. I've heard your name multiple times in the past 2 weeks. So you're on the tip of everyone's tongue because what you're building is so incredibly unique. And you've been doing it for a couple of years. So let's go to the very beginning of all this. You're an internist by trade. So how did you get started in medicine? How did you kind of kick off this whole medical career from the beginning?
Right. Okay. Good question. So I actually went to a small liberal arts college in South Carolina, where I'm from. And I always wanted to be an attorney. I wanted to be Matlock. I used to love Matlock when I was little. I wanted the suits and to go to the courtroom and all of that. And so sophomore year, it was time for me to declare my major. I was in line at the bookstore. I still remember there was probably a line of 50 people. And something didn't feel right. And I felt like I needed to get out of line and change my books to biology. And right then and there, I decided to change my major and I never looked back. So that was definitely a big turning point in my life. And then I was lucky enough to get into medical school directly after college. And the rest is kind of history. I loved everything in medical school, but I loved internal medicine. I love a puzzle. I love to figure things out, and I love continuity with patients. And so for me, it was a win-win. And I love to teach, so I stayed on as faculty at our academic medical center in South Carolina, and was there for a few years until my husband, who's a pathologist, finished residency. And so he found a job opportunity further away in South Carolina. And so I moved and went into private practice for a few years. And then I can kind of tell you how everything else got started.
Well, you mentioned Matlock. I have to tell you, Murder, She Wrote, when I was a kid, was my obsession. Murder, She Wrote, and MacGyver, because I, like you, like to solve problems. I like to take complex things and figure out how to make them really simple. So I understand completely. And I wanted to be an attorney, too. So we shared that love and decided, obviously, otherwise to not do that. But I think it's remarkable that you decided in the middle of a bookstore line to change your entire life. Like that decision changed your entire life from start to finish. Looking back on it now, it's kind of a heavy moment. Did you notice it at that point that this was like going to be an entire career shift for you forever?
I don't think I did. And I ask my team every day, they probably get sick of me saying this, what's your gut, And I truly believe that. Always go with your gut. Your first instinct is typically always right. And so I teach my residents that. I teach our providers that. I just think that's a valuable lesson.
Yes, the reptilian brain. I'm obsessed with neurology right now as well. I have a lot of obsessions, if you can't tell. But the reptilian brain, I think, in business, to your point, is such a huge undervalued asset. Knowing your gut, and when things feel wrong, they usually are wrong. Like our brains know things that we don't in our conscious mind. But I love the fact that you made that decision because I think it's probably similar to how you got into aesthetics. So you're in internal medicine, you're practicing that, and one day you just decide, hey, I'm going to become an aesthetic physician.
Right. So I had always wanted to learn aesthetic medicine. Um, my mom has gotten Botox, so she's going to murder me her whole life. Um, and so I always knew that I wanted to learn how to do it, but was always afraid to take the plunge for myself to get a treatment, and also to learn. And I'm sure a lot of physicians and providers can identify with this, but medicine is very heavy. It is a lot of paperwork. It is very trying at times. And so I found that um, I was ready for something a little more joyful. So I went and took some courses and then was lucky enough. I think I thought when I took a course, I was going to leave and have all the answers and be ready to inject. And I was terrified. And I will say, if anybody is watching this or listening and they've taken a class and you come back terrified, you're an excellent provider. It's the people who go and feel as though they're equipped and ready to do it that are frightening. And so I'll just say, if you feel that way, let me know. But I was lucky enough to find a dermatologist who took me under his wing and really trained me and cultivated that love for aesthetic medicine. I've always been artistic. I decorate cakes, which I know is so bizarre, but I think we all do something artistic in aesthetics. And um, so for me, it was just a way to marry my love of freehanding and everything artistic with my love of medicine, and it really brought joy back to my practice of medicine.
But I think this is one of the only disciplines where your left brain and right brain kind of mesh. You have to be a scientist, a researcher, a clinician, but also an artist, a purveyor of beauty. Like you've got to be really both things. And I think it's really hard for people. And also coming from medicine, asking for money is challenging. Convincing someone to buy things when there's not like a medical, physical need to have it done because it's life or death or because you're uncomfortable. But you mentioned your mom. And it's funny because I have the exact opposite story. My mom never did anything for herself. And so I grew up thinking, you just get old. Like you just look old and terrible. And I thought, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put my stake in the sand and I'm not going to age. So I think it's funny how your childhood is such an influence on things that you think about or what you perceive to be normal. I'm like the rebel in my family because because I get toxin and filler. I'm like, who is that girl? Why does she do that? But it shapes us, in a strange way. But so you have all these experiences. You're ready to rock and roll. You do your weekend of training. I think what you said is brilliant about if you're scared, then that's a good thing because it is a scary world. How did you decide to become this, single provider, going into a practice really with, to your point, no funding? You were kind of on your own with this gut instinct. How did you come about with that idea?
Yeah. So again, looking back, I was ready to get a treatment myself of neurotoxin. I'd never done it. I was very nervous. I thought about it for 5 years, and I went to a physician where I live, and I felt very dismissed. I felt like she was rushed. There wasn't a lot of time, and I love to connect with my patients. And so, couple that with the fact that I'm a busy mom with 4 kids, and I thought, gosh, I don't want to go wait in a waiting room. And I was still in clinic full time. So truly, there wasn't a way for me to have both. And so I decided, and I firmly believe that medicine is changing. Patients have different needs than they did before. They want different things, and they really value convenience. There are been done that show that they value that just as much as the credentials and the ability of their provider. So I saw a need and I thought, well, I'll just try it out. And so for the first year, it was me with a bag and a 3-ring binder. And I went to my patients' homes, and it spread like wildfire, to the point that by the second year, it was another pivotal moment for me, and it was either time to grow or stop. I was too busy. I couldn't keep doing it, and so lots of that. Yes.
Well, you said something in there about medicine changing, and I'll tell you, as a person who goes to physician, for different things now and then, and I go to a waiting room, I always think about, gosh, this is not aesthetics. Like I'm sitting in this waiting room for an hour. They're behind. The front desk lady's mean to me because my insurance has expired, but I just didn't get the new card in yet. It's like I'm a guest in their luxurious place, and I should be honored to be there. Like, but I'm the one paying the bill here, people. I think we have taken medicine and turned it on its head to say the patient is the center. Although we believe that in healthcare, truly in aesthetics, the patient has to become the center of our universe. And I think it is changing. And you mentioned the waiting room being gone, like eliminating that idea entirely. That's what I think about your business is so fascinating. We're gonna peel the onion back on that in a second about how that all happens. But so you make a decision to either grow or stop, which I think is a pivotal point for all entrepreneurs in a bootstraps organization. It's like, do I grow or am I thrown in the towel? Do I hire people? Do I bring on partners?
Caitlin Stone was the first nurse practitioner that I brought on. She and I had worked together before, and this was exactly a year after I had started. And around that time, I knew I wanted to change to an electronic medical record, right? I knew that it was valuable for us to be able to see each other's treatment plans, to be able to look at photos of patients, to offer that to my patients so that we were, in essence, a real practice. I knew that was huge, right? So, enter aesthetic record. And it really has allowed me to grow and scale in the way that we've been able to. So I'll say that first. Shortly after Caitlin joined me, I had another PA that I worked with, Jenny Fleming. And so it was the three of us for a while. And then we continued to get busier. So I was driving all over the place in South Carolina. And so I again had another moment and said, are we going to do another town? What are we going to do? And so that was when the expansion to Charleston felt natural. And I drove down to Charleston and met with Claire. I can tell you all about that story. And that was the first time I had ever told anybody my dream. And that was really scary. And so I got in the car and I called my husband and I just cried and I said she hated it. She thought it was the worst idea ever. And she actually called me right after that. We stayed on the phone for 2 hours. We met for dinner before I drove home, and the rest is history. So
Well, sharing your dream is always tough because people don't go with you on your journey. They think you're crazy. And it's always interesting. People who support you less than strangers, which I think is a novel concept, I think, for many. But I find that so interesting because I feel like people who know us put limits on us that we don't have. So you meet Claire, and I want to dig into that because I don't have a co-founder. I'm an entrepreneur. I work for someone else, but I'm a day-to-day, I'm kind of the day-to-day person in charge. And it's like a marriage. It's a relationship. There's give and take. There's love and hate. There's days I want to kill him, days I want to hug him. I feel like you need therapy. If you have a partner in your business, I feel like you need therapy, just like you do in a marriage.
it's so funny that you say that. Yes. So I texted Claire the other day. I love how I built this. I'm sure you listened to that. And the founders of Soul Cycle were on, and they go to business therapy. And I told Claire, I said, we should look into this. We should.
Well, because you spend more time at work than you do in your marriage. I mean, many of us spend more time. I work way more than I'm with even my own child or with friends. It is like a commitment for your for your life, and I feel like you have to pour into it. People who think we're gonna partner, we all want the same things. It's the same money. It's the same expenses. We're all gonna do the same thing. Well, so is a marriage, but that doesn't always work out either. I'm proof of that, by the way. But I think there is a give and take. So how do you and Claire make it work? And as you've grown and scaled, how has that relationship sort of changed to facilitate all this growth?
Gosh, okay, that's a lot of questions, a lot of good questions. And I'll back up and I'll say I do want to emphasize for people who may see this that I am meticulous. Claire would say obsessive, so potato, potato, about regulations, right? State regulations, federal regulations. And I had met with my state medical board multiple times before getting this practice off of the ground. Um, we all travel with resuscitative equipment, emergency protocols, anaphylactic medications. I'll tell you about filler in a minute, but that's a whole separate beast, right? And so, part of the reason that I met Claire is because I was looking to hire another nurse practitioner in Charleston, and she had gone to um, like a ladies networking event, and she told somebody what she was planning to do, and she said, "This person looked at me and said that's illegal," and I said, "No, it's not," and let me tell you why. And I called Claire's husband, Ed, who I actually knew from growing up, and I told him everything I was doing, and he said, "Well, it sounds like you're doing it in the right way." And I said, "Well, I appreciate that." And that was actually how we got together. So that's kind of our funny story.
Ah, well, we're going to dig into that too in a little bit about this like concierge medicine because I think people have such diverse and very strong opinions about it. So we're going to peel that one back for sure.
Yes, I know I'm very polarizing. Um, so, so yes, how we um, how we got together. Okay, so our relationship has grown since we've scaled. Yes, you're correct. It's been difficult for both of us. We really just started hiring a team this year. I mean, up until 3 months ago, it was Claire and I. We had finally gotten an admin, and then we had two NPs and a PA, so Caitlin, Jenny, and then another nurse practitioner named Jess McBride that were helping us, and we really coordinated everything. Now we have a team, and I think Claire and I have both struggled with our roles as we grow, but we are certainly settling into those, and that's been hard on both of us. You know, when I'm weak, she carries me, and vice versa. And truly, I tell people she's my co-founder because after she and I had that initial discussion, I mean, we were on the phone every day, all day. We lived in separate towns. We've never known what it's like to live in the same place, and we would talk. I mean, 8 hours a day, all the time. So she truly has been there for every instrumental decision.
Well, what you said kind of hits home. I did a feature that's actually, I think, coming out today on Instagram about being an entrepreneur. And they asked me, what's the one thing that you've learned? And I said, you know, what I'm learning right now, not learned, learning, is that I should only be doing things that only I can do. I don't need to get a link for YouTube for you. I don't need to tell you what day something is happening. I don't need to clean out the bathroom. Like things that only I can do, I should be doing because the business can't survive if I don't do the things that only I can do. All the other things have to go away. And people who are able to do those things for me should go do those things for me because they can't do those things that require, to your point, a physician's license to do or legal regulatory or meeting with your attorneys or there's just things that you at your level are the only person who can handle it. And so I'm trying to learn, Dr. Allen, I'm trying to learn to delegate. And it is so freaking hard. I have to tell you, it is so hard. I'm a control freak. I want to control everything. It's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, and you can ask Lindsay. So Lindsay is my contact at Aesthetic Record, and I mean, I am still IT. My director of operations and I still do payroll every week together. I mean, it's so you're right. It's a labor of love. I can't imagine not doing all of this because that's all I know to do. And I do think my skill set is different than one that is necessary to run an organization, I would say. I love to build things. I love to figure things out, and I'm definitely growing into leadership for sure.
Well, physicians don't go to business school. They don't go to oftentimes, learn about marketing or even leadership unless you're doing like a hospital admin kind of role. You don't really take a lot of leadership classes. So just kind of rewinding that for a second, how did you learn business skills? Like where did you go pick all this stuff up that you know how to do?
A lot of podcasts. For anybody who's interested in learning about business or thinking of starting a business that you want to scale, I can't recommend the Stanford Startup Series enough. It is available for free on YouTube. Sam Altman is a genius. Listen to it. Um, that and reading a lot. I mean, reading a lot. I can now code a website. Claire laughs at me. I mean, I built our website. So.
What's funny because I'm learning all this tech stuff. Like I'm a pretty techie person, probably like you. I mean, you have business skills just inherently, but like learning all these things. But I think if you don't know it, then people can take advantage of you. I work with developers. I have like 40 developers, and they say things that I know are just absolutely crazy. But if you don't have at least a working knowledge, you can't call them out on their BS. They'll just take you for granted or take you for a ride, and you pay the money. So I think you don't have a choice. But to your credit, you dug in and learned. And I think there's in this day and age so many great resources between marketing, podcasts, SaaS, because you're kind of like a SaaS model. You're kind of a software as a service, but for providers, because you have to take this one idea and scale it over and over and over again. So I think, and with all the legal regulatory compliance issues, as you mentioned, you've got to really have that thing buttoned up. So kudos to you for learning on your own.
Thank you. It's been fun.
And check out their site where she's custom coded her own website.
So, y'all can laugh at me.
No, I'm sure it's fantastic. Okay, so you've learned your business skills. You and Claire, you're going for it. You're heading strong. Concierge medicine. So, people think I'm going to build a practice, 4 walls, name on the door, potpourri, green grass walls, all these things. You didn't do that. So you made a very different choice. How did you get to that moment?
Gosh, I mean, I really think that I just tried my concept and I could tell it struck a chord with our patients. And like I said, it grew like wildfire. And I think um, for me, the privilege to be invited into someone's home and to be able to take care of them there has given me a new perspective on the power of that. So I told you I teach residents and I actually taught them home visits. And so for me, this wasn't that outside of my scope of practice. I will tell you, I have been advised by regulatory boards if home visits are not in your scope of practice, so you're not primary care, you do not need to do this. All of our physicians go through a home visit curriculum so that they can have this within their scope of practice. And so I do want to mention that. But with that, patients, I always say women. Claire always says patients, men too. And I say, you're right. But patients open up so much when you're in their environment. And I think the amount of trust that they put in you is pretty awesome. I tell our providers that all the time. And so I'm grateful for that and would never take that lightly.
Well, if I think about medical spas, I feel like they were the answer for patients to plastic surgery and dermatology. Like, I'm scared to go into the doctor's office. Walking across the threshold of that door, I feel like it's dollar signs because they're, a plastic surgeon. So I think med spas answered that question for a lot of patients of, I want to feel like this is like a resort, a destination kind of feeling. You've taken that to the next level to say now it's even more trusting, more, relationship oriented. The waiting room is gone into their homes. So I'm sure there's lots of complexities with that. You mentioned a couple of them. My first question for you is, as you're hiring providers across the country to do this, what are you looking for to put someone in a patient's home? To your point, that's a bit of a trusting relationship. So what are the kind of things that you look for beyond being a great injector? That's obviously, we know that's a part of it.
Yeah, personality is huge for us. And we've tried a lot of different strategies, I'll say. So we actually used artificial intelligence at one point to assign a score to people who applied. And that was interesting. It was a good experiment. I think we never trusted the AI. And so we kind of backed off of that. I think Mary Beth, what she has created in her screening process is genius. I mean, I don't, if anybody's not familiar with Mary Beth Hagan, Titan Recruiting, genius. But so in essence, that is what we're looking for, right? We're looking for someone who is responsible, kind, thoughtful, diligent about their practice of medicine, and trustworthy, right? And so, I mean, we do perform background checks on all of our providers because I can't send somebody into someone's home without that. And so that's a big thing for us. But that's truly what we're looking for. We have a very tight recruiting process. So everyone meets with two members of our team. And we've gotten that down to a science because we have so many applicants and we can't take everybody.
When you mentioned Mary Beth Hagan, to give her a quick plug, I actually went through her entire screening process over the weekend. And I will tell you, as a person who hires people, doing Indeed, getting resumes, the investment, again, as the leader, the investment of my time to look through them all, figure out if they're a fit, not a fit, look at their LinkedIn, all the things I have to do, the time it takes me to do that probably is cheaper or is more expensive than hiring Mary Beth to do it for me. Like, I wish she had the same kind of a tool for software because her tool is so robust. It's crazy. I mean,
Let's help her make it.
We need to make it. Yes, Mary Beth. We need an IT based assessment or salesperson based assessment. But I think what you have is equivalent to working from home. As we hire here, I think about who can work from home on their own, can be disciplined to do it, can get up in the morning at 7:30, get ready, be on the computer by 8, can work until 6. Like it's a different mindset than when you go into a physical building and you clock in and clock out. People underestimate the difference in a routine and structure when you don't work at a 9 to 5 job. So I think there's a whole other part of the psyche there that's around work from home. That's concierge is work from home, right? They're working from, I guess, their car in essence, but it's still not an office.
Right, right. And I would say, I always tell people I serve two populations, right? I serve my patients, but I also serve our providers. And everything I do every day is to get up and help them. How can I make their life better? It is very important to me, and I'm sure you've encountered this in your entire career, but particularly in medicine for women, it's very difficult to find flexible working solutions. And I've been lucky enough to be able to negotiate that as part of my contract always, but a lot of women aren't as lucky. And so I wanted women, female providers to have the opportunity to work on their own terms, have their work fit into their life and not their other way around. And so for me, that's a big reason why we do what we do and why I wanted to scale, right? I believe that everybody deserves that opportunity. It's hard work. It's a lot of hard work to do concierge medicine and grow your practice. It takes time for sure. It takes a lot of patience with a CE, not with a TS, and so that is also a love of mine. So
And are they? I hate to use the word hustling, but are they hustling their own patients, getting their own patients in their markets? Are they? I'm sure you're doing SEO and pay per click and all the things we do, but are they in their own markets? Like let's say in Charleston, for instance, building their own brand, building their own business, or how does that work?
yeah, they are. So Claire has been very insistent that she really is the voice of the provider for me, right? And she wants every provider to have their own voice. And I agree with that. So, no, we don't censor social media. We don't own those handles or anything like that. That is purely a reflection of our providers. Um, but it's a mixture of both. It's interesting that you say SEO and all that since I built the website. We're a little behind the times, but we did just run our first digital marketing campaign. We did a pilot over 60 days. We learned a lot. We learned about what patients like, what they don't like. So that was very helpful for us. So we have done both. We've driven patients to our providers, but a lot of it really is organic grassroots growth, just like it occurred for me. And I tell our providers, you just need one person to believe in you. The rest is magic, right? But you just need that one person.
And so true and more sustainable. We ran our first digital ad, I don't know, like 2 weeks ago. We did a 60 or a 6 week campaign, or no, I'm sorry, 6 day campaign for our conference. We've never had to really market because again, referrals are big for us. People come to us because they've heard about another person using our system. So we've not paid attention to it in the way that we probably should have, but it's now sustainable. I'm not depending on ads and SEO and the blogs that I write to keep our business going because if for some reason I can't do that, do we just close up shop? Like I think the organic growth of a company is what will stay way past the in vogue nature of an Instagram ad. So I think you're doing it correctly. But my question for you on that same idea, because I work with a group that obviously grows practices and scales, how do you decide where to go? Is it based on the provider that you like, let's say in Wyoming, or is it because you think Wyoming is a great place to go?
Yeah, it really is need. It's wherever providers reach out to us. So when a provider reaches out to us, if they're in an area, if anybody looks at our application website, you'll see a few locations open. We always leave one or two locations open because Indeed through Bamboo HR is our system, makes you select a location, which kills me. And I would love to tell them, please take that away for remote workers. But you'll see a location, and then once a provider applies, I do a preliminary legal search. Who can perform Botox and fillers? We still need to talk about fillers. Who uh, what is the supervision ratio? What's the co-signature requirement? Lots of things that I look at. Then once it passes that test, then we talk to the provider. If we love the provider and we want to offer them a contract, then I send it to our full legal team. You can imagine we have a very robust legal team, and um, then we offer them a contract. And if we do, then I know I need to look for a physician.
Well, I think we should dive into that on the legal team note, into this compliance scene, because you mentioned filler. And let me just start by saying people who are in a brick and mortar practice don't have hyaluronidase. So let's just get that out there for those of you who are listening, that safety protocols are not dictated by the place in which you hang your flag. That is not true. So I think we should get that out on the table now, that you can have a big practice that's beautiful with four walls and have no protocols for AEs at all. So that being said, how do you prepare this? I don't want to say kit, but I guess it in a sense kind of is like the traveling kit. What's in it? How do you make that decision? I think about them driving. Are they close enough to work with an AE? Is it 30 minutes away? Give us paint us the picture of your in office or in home providers.
Yeah, great question. Okay, so I always lose count. I feel like because it grows and changes every day, right? So we are around 85 providers now. Out of that, and 14 physicians. Out of that, six of us do dermal fillers, if that gives you any indication of how I feel about safety. Every one of us that perform dermal fillers carry 4 boxes of Hylenex based on the 𝑑𝗹𝗵𝗵 article with pulse high dose hyaluronidase, right? Um, we have extensive training in complications, delayed onset nodules, just typical adverse reactions or events that may occur. Um, and so I know that that's where all of our liability is, and I treat that with a reverence, I would say, because it's so important to me. Coupled with the fact that I really want to teach our providers full face consultation, appropriate techniques, and we ask that our providers have um, a lot of neuromodulator injections with us prior to us even considering training them on dermal fillers.
Yeah, there's a. I had a discussion with 𝗕VONne. I don't know if you know her. She's runs Medical Aesthetic Arts Institute, about people who walk in on day one wanting to get tear trough injection training or temple training, and you look at them and say, "Have you ever injected a corrugator?" And the answer is no. Have you ever opened a box of filler? The answer is no. Have you ever heard of hyaluronidase? The answer is no. So what in God's name makes you think you should start doing tear troughs? And it's just, and I think people are so desperate to learn and get busy and grow that they skip some very necessary foundational steps on their journey. So I love the idea that you're forcing them in essence to get that experience, injecting consultations, the whole thing before they start with what could really be, as Rod Rourke would say, don't be a savage, could really be like savagery. I mean, injecting filler can oftentimes be, and we all see it on Instagram, can be a bit of savagery. So are you flying out to these places to inject? So do you fly out to, let's say, your provider's in a different state to inject for them for filler? How does that work on your end?
So, good question. We don't offer it in those areas. So, we have a lot of opportunity for growth once we train our providers appropriately. Um, if we do that, let me say, because I'm always reassessing. I do want to go back and just say for newer providers that may be listening, the number one complaint to medical boards across the country is nasojugal groove filler, tear trough filler, whatever you want to call it. So for anyone who's listening and you feel like that's something you want to learn, if you're not terrified of that procedure, you need to reassess where you are, because that is the number one complaint to medical boards. So I think that's interesting to note. The other thing that's interesting is, I know you know Rob Hubert with
Mm-hmm.
Allergan, who I was lucky enough to meet with, and Allergan has a lot of data about proficiency of providers. And truly, you are proficient at neuromodulator injections after 55 injections. And so our requirement for dermal fillers is much higher than that. But I do think that's important for other practice owners to know. If you hire a new provider, they really need 55 neuromodulator injections before they're proficient and competent and safe.
And I think that doesn't even include the idea of masseters and DAOs and Even bunny lines can have some serious breathing implications. But I think about temples right now because I just read an article, the one up, one over we've talked about for years. But now with ultrasound technology, we're finding out that these things we felt were safe are definitely not safe. Obviously, anatomical variations, we've known that for hundreds of years. But I think we're learning now with ultrasound that many of the things that we thought were, a home run may not be. So it's becoming more and more complex. I think the nasolabial fold, same thing. You want to occlude a facial artery? There you go, NLF.
I think about times where I have filled the nasolabial folds, which I rarely do. I'm a mid face girl. I love structure. Give me a temple and a cheek and a chin all day. Nothing makes me happier. But gosh, yeah, I think about some of the things that I did when I was first starting, and I cringe. It terrifies me.
Yes, well, and it's always a game of numbers, right? You do enough of them, things happen. It's just the nature of the beast. So be prepared. But to that same token, what would you say to someone, to put you on the total spot here, who says, Dr. Allen, going into a person's home, it's not sanitary, it's not clean, you can't do that, they should be in a medical practice. How do you combat that?
Good question. So I have two ways that I would answer that. One, anyone is welcome to come to my former University Medical Center office or my current office, which is delightfully clean. But I perform knee injections, routinely in that office, shoulder injections. And I can tell you, I can create a safe environment wherever I am with the supplies that we have. We order only medically approved supplies. I mean, that goes without saying, right? And so for me, that's how I can do that. I can create a safe space wherever I go, down to the point, this is how meticulous I am, OCD, whatever you want to call it. We have an onboarding platform called Trainual, which is fabulous. But do y'all use it? It's down to the point that I have a picture of our setup of what I want a provider setup to look like when they go in someone's home. I want it to be the same quality, same safety, same standard everywhere you are. So that's one thing. The second thing I'll say is think about all the things that we do in the home. We do ventilator care, trach care, PICC dressing changes. That's a sterile dressing change. There are things that you do in a home and things that we will continue to advance more in because people need to be out of the hospital more. And so I believe that that's the case too. So as long as our providers do what they're taught, they can create a safe space wherever they are.
Well, that's what always baffles me is we've had home health for generations. We've had people coming out of nursing homes, rehabilitative care in their home. We've, to your point, done dressing changes, and we have been doing this kind of thing for a very long time. It just happens to be that this is an aesthetics procedure and not, a dressing change. But wound care to me requires far more sterile environment than some Botox. It's a way different level, way different playing field. But what you mentioned about the setup, I want to speak to that because at scale, which is what we fight every day, in our business and in yours, is scale, is taking the picture of the setup and saying, this is what it has to look like. I think people forget how much detail is required at scale. Look at McDonald's, the fries are always the same. The burger is always the same. You cannot legally, by the way, I think this is a legal note, you cannot legally defend yourself and say that we do it the same way every time unless you actually do it the same way every time. Teach it, train it, assess it, evaluate and correct. Like you have to do it that way. But I think that's the part of it, the manual type, the training manual, which training, by the way, is an incredible platform, is a non-negotiable, especially as geographically spread out as you are. You can't possibly go to every appointment and check all the providers and are they doing it correctly. You have to be able to give them the tools.
Right, right, agreed. And I do think this brings up another point. Um, if someone were to start a practice like this and do this, because let's be honest, everyone across the nation is doing this, right? Dermatologists, plastic surgeons for years have offered this service for their patients. They call them Botox parties. There are two words you can never say to me. Party is one of them. It is an event. And so, because I just think Botox parties have such a negative connotation. But people have done this for years in an informal way. I want to provide a safe, formalized practice for people to join to be able to offer this to their patients. With that comes a great attention to your medical malpractice policy, not If you are doing this outside of your brick and mortar and it's not on your med mal policy, that's a problem. It is to the point that I have to write down every off-label injection we perform, including DAOs, nasalis, masseters for certain toxins. If I have a toxin that doesn't have a label indication, I have to write that down. So I just think it's very important for people to note, um, a lot of thought, care, planning, labor of love has gone into this.
Well, and the interesting thing about legal team you mentioned earlier, just to again express how my fangirling of you is, folks will call me and want me to build their consents and questionnaires. Like, can you build my consent? Like, you need a legal team. This is your license. Like, you went to school, especially as a physician, you went to school for like 100 years to become a physician, and you're wanting a person who is not an attorney, who is in industry. I could probably do it for you 100%, but I'm not. I'm not a legal expert, just like I can't practice medicine. But I think people are so eager to cut corners. And one of the things I talk about a lot is you have to build for today what you'll be in 10 years. Because if you don't, when the growth occurs, it's too far gone and you're too far behind schedule. So people, hire an attorney, put them on your payroll, and make sure that you are buttoned up, because that is where the wheels fall off and you cannot come back from that. You can come back from like a bad promotion that didn't work, or a provider who was mean to patients, or a bad outcome, drop brow. You can't come back from breaking the law. That's a hard one to overcome.
Right,
Spend money
right.
there.
And two things that I'll say about that. One, when I joined, I don't know where Aesthetic Record was when I came on. I would be interested to know what number client I was, but I just remember seeing it and I was like, this is exactly what I need. And so when I first came on, I built the system for our practice, and that was invaluable for me. So I know if I tinker with one thing, it's going to mess up something else. I'm going to have to do that too. And I think as a provider, to have that experience, that was huge for me. So if you are tech inclined, learn the back end, learn the front end. It'll help you everywhere.
And learn how things, I think to your point, I think about this a lot, like promotions. That promotion creates a discount, which means our COGS are the same price. We lose our profitability, which means it could take more hours in the room. We have to upsell something. Like, I think all these dots as a provider, although we want you to be, medically inclined, you have to also understand business. If you give away the house, we can't keep the doors open. Like, you have to be able to make money and have enough value in yourself as a provider to say, I am worth $15 a unit, period. There doesn't need to be a discount. Like, I'm not discounting my service. You don't discount your hairdresser. She says it's $400 for your, for my blonde hair, period. They don't run promos at my salon. So I think we make a lot of allowances in medicine because we're scared to either A, ask for money, or we think patients want discounts. I'm always a little bit squeamish on discounts and things. I'm like, I wonder why it's on sale. This can't be real. There's a catch somewhere. I think patients are getting smarter too. They expect it, actually, I think, less and less now. We have Aspire. We have programs to help them get discounts. I think they want you to be really good at your job, show up, give a great outcome, be super friendly and very helpful, and great consultations, be a source of knowledge, and then go home and be done. It's pretty simple.
Right. I don't want to be the most affordable. Right. I mean, that's discounting our value as healthcare providers, how hard you've worked for your credentials. And so I always tell our providers, own that, be proud of what you've done, all the work you've put in, and you're worth it. It's hard for people to hear that. The other thing I do want to say is, um, I think a lot of us fall into the trap of, well, the practice down the street is doing X. And y'all, it doesn't matter what the practice is doing down the street. Worry about yourself. Make sure your house is in order. Um, and don't say just because they're doing it, it must be okay. I guarantee you 9 times out of 10, it's not. And they just don't know it and they haven't put in the work. And so I just think that's important for practices to note.
And then their patients become enslaved to the discounts. And when the discounts end, because the practice can't afford to survive, they stop doing it. The patients quit coming. I always say, be so busy building your own brand and your own, entity that you can't focus on what they're doing. Because to your point, maybe they're using imported product, or they have an RN who just started and she's still training, but she's offering a discounted, toxin unit. Now you have a drop brow, you have DAOs that don't, it could be a whole slew of things. It's never apples to apples, especially in your model, because you're doing concierge at their house, the convenience, the fear of the doctor's office is gone, the fear of walking in and being judged is gone. Like you've kind of taken the veil off of all that. And there's a fee for that. I mean, there's a fee for things. Look at Amazon. I pay more to have it delivered. I joined Prime, right? I pay Prime to get it here tomorrow. It's worth it for me. You're like the Prime. You're the additional value that I'm paying for because of the convenience in my life. So I think that discounts. That's a whole different podcast. But to go to one more incredible thing that you're doing, I want to talk about the Beauty Knox box, because I love subscription boxes. I think they're fascinating. But you're doing medical grade skincare during COVID, by the way, which I think is like the most interesting time in our entire industry has been COVID, and seeing people like grow and change and develop, and those who didn't do it. But give us a bit of the Beauty Knox box idea, where it came from, and what your future goals are for that.
Right. Okay. So one day during the pandemic, I was still going to clinic every day. And so I was still seeing patients. And I came home one day and I called Claire, and I could tell she was like in the bed laying down. It was just, it was a hard time for everybody. And I think she was taking care of one of her girls. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she was like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Get up. We're going to make the box," because we talked about it. And we'd always been afraid to take the plunge. So I really wanted to bring medical grade skincare to lots of different patients. But in order to do that, and particularly some of the lines that we carry, like we love 𝑤𝑖𝑡ℎ skincare, you have to have a relationship with a provider. And that was difficult. So we really wanted to pair our subscribers with an NP, PA, MD, or DO that they could ask questions of, learn how to use their skincare regimen. And so that was the thought behind it. The box really is for people who love to try different products, right? I tell people, if you're always on a regimen and you follow your skincare regimen, the box may not be for you. It's a way for you to try great products and discover new things. And so that's really what it is.
And it has this great quiz. I took the quiz last night. I was going through it. Has a great quiz. You have 24-hour basically support for patients who have questions, which I think is remarkable. Are you using virtual consults for that, or how are they doing that on the box side of it?
Yeah, so we're not. You can certainly, you can always reach your provider by FaceTime now with COVID restrictions lifted, or you can simply text your provider. You can email, however you prefer to correspond, and ask any questions. So that provider comes with your box. I tell people it's kind of funny.
But that is the value add. That's where I wanted to get to. Is I think the value add for the box is that the provider comes with it. Because in skincare, we're doing this esthetician track for Aesthetic Next this year, because it's so misunderstood. People think, "Oh, I'll just sell my skincare, it'll be great." Like, no, they have no idea how to use it at home, when to use what. Is it AM? Is it PM? Should I be using my AHA, BHA, and I'm going in the sun? Like, I have retinol, do I go in the sun? Like, they don't know the answer. And so to give them, it's like you give them all the weapons and no idea how to shoot the gun. I think that part of it is what gives it such value, is that you're giving them the next step to actually be successful with what you're selling them. So, if you're going to do it, I think you're doing it the way that me as a patient would need it to be done, because I'm terrible at regimens and at routines. I'm the worst. You have to beat it into my head to do it. So I'd be the one texting in the middle of the night, like, what do I do now? What's next?
Yeah, right. It's hard. Yeah. And I tell our providers that, for a lot of us, we're procedurally inclined. This procedures make sense to me, right? Skincare is the really hard stuff to learn at times, because there are so many options. I mean, as a poor patient, you are just bombarded with options, and it's hard to break that down for people in a way they can understand.
Well, I think acne is that way. My sister had chronic acne growing up, and because she used 18 different things, she would use a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it's like, you're doing so much that it's counteractive, or counteracting the benefits. You're actually making it worse. But it wasn't a time in dermatology where they actually told you that. It was like, here's your prescription, good luck, go to Walmart, get it over the counter. And so I look at her journey, and even now as a 42 years old, she still fights acne because she doesn't have a great skincare person to tell her, here's what you should actually be doing. Stop all the madness, do this thing. And so I think your box really simplifies obviously it's a chance to try different things, but it's like for your skin type, here's what you need. Don't do anything else. Just do these things. And I think that's a missing. Again, you filled a hole in the industry. You found a gap and filled it.
Thanks. Thank you. Well, definitely give me her phone number and I'll have Claire reach out to her. She's my skincare extraordinaire. We'll take.
I'm gonna do it for sure because she needs your help.
I think, we discount a lot of times how it rattles your confidence. When you have a breakout, when you have a blemish, lots of blemishes, I mean, it really does. It shatters your confidence. And I think that's so important for patients. It's important to remember that side of it, put yourself in their shoes, and find a way to help them.
And what I love, I'll say just to wrap this part up, is that you make skincare part of your core tenets of your practice. I see so many injectable practices who inject all day long. And I think skincare is such a misunderstood or undervalued part of the full patient journey. And I think COVID kind of taught us that. If we couldn't get injected during COVID, we became skincare obsessed, right? We all wanted to do masks at home and skincare routines. And I think all of our skin's a lot better because of COVID, for one thing, because we actually focused on it. But there's so much you can do that's non-injectable to help someone's appearance. Like, to your point, if all you can do is Botox or toxin in practice, then you still have an armamentarium of thousands of other things you can do to help patients look and feel their best without injecting filler. Like, I think that's a genius part that people are still really having a hard time getting their minds around in the industry.
Right. I tell people, if you get Botox and filler and you don't use the appropriate skincare, number one, you're not protecting your investment, but it's like going to the dentist and never brushing your teeth.
Just ew. That just
Yuck. I
feels
know.
gross. Well, as we kind of
No one wants to think of it.
as we kind of close this up, I want to touch on one more thing, which is that you are a mother of 4 kids, and you have a husband, and you're doing all this. So, from a survival perspective, how are you managing all of that and all of this?
Okay, good question. So I'll just say I have a very supportive husband, right? I mean, it would be impossible to do this without, and he is my majority partner, I would say. So Keel started out doing payroll for me, and then has done lots of things in addition to his day job, I'll say. Um, my oldest is Keel says that every family with multiples. I don't know how many kids were in your family, but the oldest tends to be the dictator. We just have a very benevolent dictator, so she helps me run a tight ship, and that's hugely helpful. And then I have babysitters and lots of people who help me. So I have a lot of help. Yeah.
I think it's great for kids to see their mom growing up, watching you do all these things and learn and conquer and achieve and build. I think there's such a value in that as they go into their own professional lives, to know it's all possible. You just have to work at it. You guys got to dig your heels in and do it. So kudos to you for being a mom that's setting a great example. And for your husband, God bless the husbands out there who have to, pick up the load. Yeah.
That's the truth. Yeah.
And he's also a physician who's probably really busy in his own practice as well. So #power couple is what we'll say here.
Thank you. He's very excited. He just got a microscope for home. So I told him, I said, I don't know how we can get much more nerdy than we are, but there we go.
Things you don't hear. I built my own website, and I have a microscope at home. Like, we've had 2 fun things here in this podcast.
Right. I'm sorry. It's terrible.
No, I think we're all nerdy a little bit, right? That's how we got to where we are, is because you have passions and things that are not the norm. They're off the status quo for sure. Well, I've had a fantastic time chatting with you. I hate that it's over. I want to keep talking to you about all the things that you're doing.
Yeah, I know.
But tell us, if we're a provider who has experience and who's interested in your model and getting in touch with you, how do we get a hold of you and apply for jobs?
So you can go to the website. Please don't be judgmental. You can scroll all the way down to the bottom, and there's a link that says career opportunities or apply now. You can find us across all panels, theskinclique.com. My personal handle is Sarah L. Allen, MD. I'm about to do a really fun filler and Hylenex series. I'm really excited. And so hopefully that'll be coming out soon. And that's how you can find us. You can DM me directly. You can DM the Skin Clique. We'll take care of you.
And if you want to get the Beauty Knox box, you can also get that on the site too. Take the fun quiz.
Go to the website. Yeah.
And get that delivered right to your door. So you've got a lot of fun incredibly exciting things happening, I think, coming out of COVID, even more so because you're doing what people are going to be doing very soon. They're going to understand quickly that this is the right model. You just got 2 years head start on all of them, which is, I think, an ability to see the future is really uncanny. And, kudos to you for having that. I don't have it. I try, but you saw the future 2 years ago.
Thank you. I'll say cross your T's and dot your I's. So,
Yes, our lessons here are button it up, be compliant, be legal, do your homework.
yes. Yeah, because regulation is coming in the aesthetic industry, right, for all of us. And so, if we're all doing it in the right way, then we're all going to be much better off. We don't want a few bad apples to give us all a bad name.
Couldn't agree more. Well, for the record, you have been a fantastic guest. We've loved having you. And guys, go check out her site that she built herself, theskinclique.com. Check her out on Instagram and her new series coming up. And I look forward to seeing your wildly successful continued growth in the industry.
Thank you. Thank you. Such a pleasure, such a dream to sit down with you. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye, guys. Thanks for listening to another episode of For the Record. This podcast is not intended to provide legal or medical advice. It's for entertainment, education, and information purposes only. For more information on this week's guest or to get started with Aesthetic Record, email us at info@aestheticrecord.com. Be sure to tune in next week for more fresh perspectives on disrupting the status quo and surviving in the aesthetics industry.